So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about each of the categories. We'll start off with intention. There are 3 or 4 things that actually encompass intention. So the first one is the thing that you want. Next, the things that you need. Next, the expectations that you have. And finally, the decisions you make. So in a nutshell, when you think about these 4 things, it helps you to get clearer about your intention, where you want to go, why it is that you want to go there, for the purpose of discerning the values, the character behind that intent. So one day, the guy comes up and says, oh, I want to attract millions and millions of dollars. I want to become wealthy beyond my imagination. And when the universe hears it, it says, okay, I'll make you a bankrupt so that no matter what happens, you're going to be able to stand up for yourself. You're going to move forward in treating money very carefully, and you're going to make yourself invincible to the ups and downs in movements of money, right? But actually, that's not what you want, right? You wanted to become rich, and yet there's this pushback from the universe to say, if I gave you this, you will never get what you want. You'll always be faltering because of what you need. So again, understanding the need. If let's say you wanted a fantastic relationship, what did you need? Maybe you needed self-care. Maybe you needed to understand your own intention behind a relationship in the first place. If you've always wanted to own a car that's a luxurious car like a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, why did you want it? What did you need actually? Maybe you needed recognition, and if that's the case, maybe the car isn't going to cut it, right? So you don't necessarily want to get recognition by having the car and then crashing it and killing somebody, right? So you've got to recognize that intent is a very, very vague thing that can only be made clear as you're going through this process of discernment. So once again, wants, needs, decisions, and expectations. So the last thing about expectations I want to highlight to you has got to do with assumptions. So I expect my business partner to understand why I'm making a decision, because we've had all these conversations before. So why is she blowing me off this time? Now, as you stop and you think about that intention and you go, hang on, what is my intention for having this discomfort or this frustration? And as you're getting inside of yourself to consider what your assumptions are, perhaps you come to a recognition that the assumption is that she has to think exactly the same way as I do. But the truth of the matter is, if you're in a successful business, chances are 2 partners are very, very different. And that's the value of having a partnership in the first place. So as you come to reconcile some of the intent behind the way you think, it becomes stronger. You get a sense of your the reason why you make these kinds of decisions. You become clearer about your values. Maybe one of your values that's in conflict with your business partnership is harmony. And as a result, you may then have to rethink what harmony actually means. Harmony may mean stability, but it may also mean groupthink, right, and stagnation. So you have to decide which one it means in order for you to get clear in terms of where you want to go now in the short run vis-a-vis the long run. So take some time. Think about the intent that you set for today. What is it that you intend for the day? Do you intend for it to be a good day? Why? What do you want? What do you need instead? What are your expectations and assumptions about a good day? And based on your decisions that you've made in the past about creating a good day, why did you make them? What drove you to make those decisions? And as you go along this pathway, you become clearer about discerning intention. Ever had that experience where your words came out faster than you could think, and as a result you said something wrong, or you said something that was really hurtful? Now, sometimes you may need to do things after the fact in terms of discerning where you've come from so that you can prevent that part of you from coming out again. Or you can get to understand where you can channel that energy into the right locations. So this is where we talk about discerning your expression. So what have you said to people? What has been said back to you? So in terms of the expression, how you say it and what you said and what actions you took are a function of discerning expression. So perhaps there was one day you were in a Grab or an Uber and the driver said passed a comment and said something about you, and you became really sarcastic. Now, when you got off the car and you started to think about it, you said, why in the world did I say such a thing? Now, as you begin to think of this, obviously journaling down the way you're thinking is extremely important. As we said, it's about setting the parameters and the patterns by which we actually carry out a discernment process of our expression. So I said this. Why did I say that? What was going on inside me emotionally? So this is where you connect with emotions later on. And then what else could I have said? Who had said that to me previously? Why did I respond the way that I did? And through this process of understanding the expression, you begin to understand the labels that have been attached to each of these expressions. So it's easy for someone to say, oh, you look smart today. And there's some people who go like, what, you mean I wasn't smart yesterday? So it becomes a meaning match. So somebody goes, oh, you're looking really cool today, or you've got a really nice hairstyle. And someone else can interpret it as something completely different. And the reason why is because you have allowed all this to operate on autopilot. And through those autopilot behaviors, it's unlikely that you want to let your autopilot go, especially if you put your foot in your mouth. So it's important to, therefore, discern the reactions based off your expressions. So how did you say it? Could you have said it better? Now, once you decided to, or shall I say, once you've written down all of these expressions, then decide how you'd like to say it instead, right? Or if you said something that was really powerful, how can you decide to do it again? Because it's all about doing more of what you want to create a positive impact in the world, and then doing less of or cutting away the things that are not really relevant. The next thing about expression is to reframe expression. For instance, remember the Uber example that I gave you? You got off the car and you went like, what in the world did I say such a thing? Now, this is where you can reframe it. You can say, under what circumstances could I say such a thing and get away with it? Right? So that's a reframe within the context. You perhaps, maybe a stand-up comedy, you could use that, maybe somewhere else. But the idea is that when you reframe the context of your expression, it allows you to see or discern where that expression could be utilized. So if you got really angry at, let's say, a baby, okay, and then you thought about it, you said, that doesn't seem to make sense to me. The baby doesn't necessarily even understand what I'm saying. So you take a step back and you go, okay, where would I use that language? Perhaps when I'm having a really heated argument and I want to make my point, bring my point across to someone who's been oblivious, who really doesn't understand what I've been saying over the last iteration of 3 or 4 meetings. Perhaps that can be useful. So rather than try to take the so-called negative side of us, the negative behaviors and negative expressions, and say that's wrong and I don't want to do it anymore, look for a space where it can exist, because the fact that it exists probably means it can exist harmoniously somewhere else. Okay, so this is all about expression. So what I'd like you to do is sit down, spend a little bit of time thinking about the nature of your expressions. So what have you said recently? Where have you said it recently? Whom did you say it to? And what were your feelings about it? As you write that down, get clear in terms of where you could use it, why you should not want to use it again, and what's a more useful expression that you will use within such a context. So go ahead, do a little bit of that reflection, and we'll come to that next segment. So we're on the third element of discernment, known as experience. And discerning experience is something that most people generally would do. I'm not sure how well they do it, but from my understanding, it becomes almost second nature to journal past experiences, things that you remember, things that you recall. Now, I'd like you to understand that discerning the past is not a way of living in the past. Discerning the past is to unravel what has happened in the past so you can make sense of it. So for instance, if for much of your life you've come to decide that certain types of people, for the sake of argument, let's say insurance agents, you absolutely hate insurance agents, you're cheated by one before, your mom's life savings was taken out, whatever it might be, okay? So you discern the past by looking at that experience as a snapshot of your life. Then you begin to look back into your intentions, you begin to look back at your emotions, you begin to look back at the way you express this to the people around you. Because experience is just a snapshot, it's something that has happened to you. So what were the processes that you took part in? How did you go about experiencing this? What was going on inside your head, your heart, and in your body? Once you're able to decipher this, then you can also decide what meaning that experience actually had in your life. So I've seen some people, for example, they see other people who are wasting food. They get very upset. They say, no one should waste food like that. Now that's an expression, but it also is encapsulated in an entire experience of dining. So perhaps initially the group of friends was having a good time. This person suddenly spouts, you should be wasting your food. That's a big sin. And then you got into an argument. Now that is encapsulated within an experience. So what you want to do is then consider, what were you perceiving at that point of time? What was the meaning of it? So if you were the one who was saying it, perhaps you could say, oh, it's because I came from a really poor background and I didn't have very much to eat. And as a result, I blame people for actually wasting food. Perhaps. Perhaps if you then think about a new meaning to make of it, it's like, well, I've come of age. I've come to a point where wasting food is a possibility. In the past, when I had no food, that wasn't a possibility at all. Right? So again, this is a form of reframing the experience in and of itself. Now, if you're the recipient of this experience, you might want to think about how the social dynamic has changed. And you're going, wow, we started off really friendly, and then now we're going into this kind of an argument back and forth. I wonder what that means. Well, what does it mean to you now? Well, it means like I'm always being misunderstood. You can take that meaning. Alternatively, you can sit back and start considering maybe we don't really know each other that well. And as a result, there's something else that we could do to shift this experience. For example, I could express appreciation, or I could disclose certain feelings and thoughts in order for the social environment within this group of friends to flourish. Okay, so thinking about experiences is not that difficult. I'm sure some of you have done journaling work before. You've gotten your journal, you've thought about what you did when you woke up, what you thought, what you did next, how much of your work assignments you completed, how many percent of that conversation you have yet to complete, and so on and so forth. You've got all these things, a to-do list that you reflect upon. But what are the meanings behind you doing it and not doing it? What were the meanings of people saying certain things to you, experiencing certain things, that email that came through that jolted you, right? Now, as you're listing this out, it becomes clearer to you the nature of the meanings that you make inside your head. Some of those meanings are no longer relevant. Some of those others can be better placed in specific situations or contexts through reframing. One more thing I'd like to add about experience is that in the here and now, it's easier for you to experience connections. So for instance, sometimes you get a weird tingling sensation in your back. No, I'm not talking about the spider sense, but I do believe that there's a number of people who create the opportunity to utilize everything that the universe is offering them, right? It may not feel like it looks like a coincidence, but it feels too close to be a coincidence. In which case, there is an experience that you're having in the physical sensation that gives you a question that you have to raise to the universe. What's happening here? What's going on? What am I sensing? What images are coming to my mind? So these are forms of perception that are outside of your typical, what you see, hear, and feel. Some of this may be quantum information that's transmitted through whatever's going on there. So as you sit back and you start discerning, I'm starting to get that strange hair-raising experience every time I walk past this room. There must be something going on there. So sit back, utilize that experience, and begin to allow your senses to open up the connections. I've seen people, for example, who can sit down and trace a problem, an emotional issue or a physical issue, by just getting a sense of the information that's been presented to them, And as a result, when they mention certain things, the problem literally disappears. Now, this is, some people say psychic work or whatever, but in my opinion, I think it's a very interesting cutting-edge amount of quantum-based healing that a lot of people don't understand yet. So I'd like you to take it with a pinch of salt, use your discernment work to get a sense of it, and sometimes you realize that logically you've kind of like shoved a lot of things out of your mind, when in reality what you could be doing is utilizing all of the information that has been granted to you by the universe to do some form of calibration, some form of discernment from within your own internal experience. This is allowing the experience that's been hitting you from, call it collective unconscious process, to let that emerge from within you. And while that might sound a little bit strange, it's a very powerful process. And if you'd like to know more, make sure that you join our community sessions and come and have a coaching session on that. So now let's talk about emotions. We all know that there's this movement about empathy, EQ, all that kind of stuff that's going on in the corporate world these days. And truth be told, emotions can be discerned quite readily by asking yourself, are you even aware of what emotions you're going through? Can you sense emotions in other people? Can you utilize emotions to move people? Are you moved by emotional experience as well? So this is an element within discernment that helps you to pay close attention to emotions, because emotions are sort of like doorways to help you to understand certain things. I'll give you an example. There was a friend of mine who had a dream. It was a recurring dream. He dreamt that he was at the edge of a lake, which was very glassy, and it made him feel very serene. But as he started to go into the lake and he walked into the lake, it felt really negative because it felt heavier and heavier, and the ripples blurred the surface of that lake. So he had a very disturbing experience with that dream. So when I talked to him about it, I said, what's the emotion? Just put that image inside your mind once again. Tell me what's the emotion that you got as a result of having that dream. And you know what he said? He said, initially it was harmonious and peaceful. And then after that, something broke the harmony. Something made it just disconcerting. It's like it was picture perfect and I had to go and destroy it. And I said, how does that act as an analogy to your life? And all of a sudden, a light bulb went off in his head. And he said, yeah, I've always wanted security and harmony in my life. And the more I chase it, the more I don't have it. So this form of discernment work is sometimes insightful in nature, but it connects with emotion and experience jointly. So the experience was a dream. The emotion is something that you trace from the experience. And then you begin to filter through what exactly you're feeling and attempting to label that emotion as closely as possible. Now, of course, emotions are easier sensed from inside of you, but sometimes you take away emotions that don't belong to you. For example, you just come out of a movie and you were really moved by that movie. Maybe it was a boxing movie and maybe this guy was really charging, going all out for his goal of being a heavyweight champion like Rocky or something. Now, don't be surprised that the emotion latches onto you, and then you want to use that emotion to carry out doing the things in your work. And all of a sudden, when you lose a bit of that fire, it makes you feel mad or crazy or unhappy. So sit down and ask whether the emotion has come from somewhere else. And if it has, sometimes you can just simply let it go. So emotions, very easy for you to do, but at the same time, it requires you a great amount of honesty. So where are those emotions coming from? What did you learn? And sometimes when you trace the emotion and you use that emotion as a window or a doorway to open up an experience, certain things might come up from childhood, from old memories and so on, that then may require you to act upon them, right? So go ahead, spend some time tracing your emotions, and I believe that there's something you come to recognize about the usage of emotions in your discernment practice. So we're going to talk about energy, and I don't mean that when you wake up you feel very energized to go and do your work. That's not the kind of energy that I'm talking about. That, I would say, will go under emotion. energy is something that you sense. Now, I know it sounds a little bit strange because I'm going into a little bit of the quantum elements of energy right now. Now, DNA is fused with different kinds of enzymes and protein structures and so on. But embedded within DNA is a process of passing down information. That comes from photons, which are, as you know, a form of energy. Now, you may not realize this, but just simply sitting down and meditating allows photonic charge to travel outside from within your body, and you emit millions and millions and millions of photonic charge as you're doing forms of meditation that are heart-centered. Now, you have to remember that energy given off can also be energy that you're seeing or experiencing someone else give off and receiving. So let's take a look at it from a step-by-step standpoint. So let's suppose today you woke up and you decided to give yourself a nice energetic cleansing. So you sat down, you did your clearance work, you did your grounding work, and you're meditating, and you come out of that feeling absolutely refreshed. Energy level, high, right? You go out into the world, you start doing some of these things, and you seem to be on a roll there. You're focused. Now, as you're doing all this, you don't know whom you're affecting, right? So you're passing by people as you're doing your work, other people are watching you, and when they watch you, they're sensing some of this energy getting transmitted to them. Now, you may not realize this, or whether there is a connection or not, I cannot say, but the energy that you're giving off could be the reason why psychologists have stumbled upon something known as the contagion effect. In other words, you crack a joke, one side of the room gets it, and then all of a sudden the entire room starts to get it, and then there's a spread of that laughter throughout the entire hall. Now, this is not an uncommon effect, especially in terrorist attacks, in where the death of a beloved country's leader takes place, things like that, right? Where overwhelming amounts of emotion transit throughout the entire country or the region. So protests in Hong Kong, for example, that's one of the ways by which you can see a fiery anger that just cannot be doused, right? Now, that kind of energy, you may wonder where it comes from, how it has been utilized, and how you're responding to it. So I would like you to get a sense of the energy by simply allowing the emergence of the sensing of the energy, which of course is encapsulated in your experience, to go into that experience and start asking yourself questions like, where did my energy come from? Whom did I pass by? Where did I pass by? What was the energy that was transmitted to me? What is the energy that is transmitting from me? And as that happens, you become a little bit clearer in terms of the nature of the energy that you're giving off in the world. And sometimes you have to ask the next deeper question, how did I choose this energy? Which goes back to intention. And sometimes the intentional energy, your intentional statement, your expression of that is, I want today to be a great day. But the energetic intention behind that is, I've been feeling so lousy for so long, I hate it when I have to do this extra work, right? Now, when these two energies clash, some certain things will happen inside of you. I'm not exactly sure what. To different people, there'll be different experiences. But I definitely suggest that you calibrate to these energies. So what have you absorbed from other people? Last night, did you go out with a bunch of friends where they were gossiping and talking about something very negative? Or were you watching a horror movie, okay, that talks about the decimation of all life on Earth, right? Now, those kinds of things can be emotional latch-ons in your experience. So sometimes if you realize it doesn't come from you, you can just say, I'll just release it, just let it go. Conversely, if it did come from you, where did it come from? Did it come from your past experience? Or did it come from transgenerational trauma? In other words, DNA that's been propagating and all the information that's been passed down from generation to generation to generation. Could it be that? Could it be a problem that your ancestors couldn't solve that you have to solve right now? So transgenerational trauma is not a new thing. It's been around in psychological literature for decades. And for now, we want to extrapolate that. Sometimes the problems that you're facing have been passed down to you, right, from one generation to the next. Could it possibly be that you have to deal with it now. If not, pass it down to your next generation to solve it for you. All right? So as you think about all of these things, once again, energy and energy work and energy discernment is neither easy nor difficult. It's just something that we are all, to a certain extent, gifted to do. All we need to do is to tune in, kind of like put aside the so-called rational bit for a while, and understand that there are particles of information floating around in the universe that are affecting you. So as you allow these pieces of information to come to you, allow these to emerge from within, get a sense of it, a holistic sense of it, so that the discernment star operates as a whole. Now, what you can do is to sit down and begin to discern the nature of the energies that are coming through even this video. Is it for you or is it against you? Is it well-intended or not? As you start thinking about all of these things, you begin to read the information that has been embedded inside this video in and of itself. Now, you'll know this because as you go out into the world, you realize some people are better intentioned because of the energy that they're giving to you. And then there's some who are not so positive, right? Doesn't take a rocket scientist to get a vibe out of this. So what I recommend for you to do is to take some time to study it and really get a sense of it so that you become clearer in terms of the energies that are affecting you and the energy that you're emitting and giving out to the rest of the world. Let's see whether that is congruent with the energy that you intend to give, especially with regard to the goals you want to accomplish, the outcomes you want to reach, and so on. Okay, so in the meanwhile, if you enjoyed this series and you enjoyed this discernment foundational workshop, technically it's a relatively long video, but what I'd like you to do is then make sure you subscribe, share this with your friends, and make sure you do this on a regular basis. Take the discernment star, look at it, and allow yourself to go through each and every one of these elements on a regular basis so that you can get clearer on the patterns of your behavior internally, externally, transgenerationally, and energetically as well. So, did you learn anything from that video? If you did, just give it a thumbs up and then click on the subscribe button and hit the notifications icon so that you and I will continue to stay in touch and I can provide you with updates whenever we have new videos.